And Justice. Wonder Women of Vrill. The Vrill Society was actually formed by a group of female psychic mediums led by the Theolgesellschaft medium Maria Orsic, of Vienna, who claimed to have received communication from Aryan aliens who lived on the planet Sumer, in Alpha Centauri, in the Aldebaran system. Allegedly, these aliens had visited Earth and settled in Sumeria, and the word Vrill was formed from the ancient Sumerian word Vriya, like God. A second medium was known as Sigrun, a name etymologically related to Sigrun, a Valkyrie and one of Woden's 9 daughters in Norse legend. The society allegedly taught concentration exercises designed to awaken the forces of Vrill, and their main goal was to achieve Raumflug, spaceflight, to reach Aldebaran. To achieve this, the Vrill Society joined the Theolgesellschaft to fund an ambitious program involving an interdimensional flight machine based on psychic revelations from the Aldebaran aliens. Members of the Vrill Society are said to have included Adolf Hitler, Alfred Rosenberg, Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, and Hitler's personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell. These were original members of the Thiel Society, which supposedly joined Vrill in 1919. The NSDAP, National Sozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei, was created by Thiel in 1920, 1 year later. Dr. Krohn, who helped to create the Nazi flag, was also a Thielist. With Hitler in power in 1933, both Thiel and Vrill Gesellschaft allegedly received official state backing for continued disk development programs aimed at both spaceflight and possibly a war machine. After 1941, Hitler forbade secret societies, so both Thiel and Vrill were documented under the SS-EIV unit under Heinrich Himmler's SS. The claim of an ability to travel in some interdimensional mode is similar to Vrill claims of channeled flight with the Jenseitsflugmaschine, otherworld flight machine, and the Vrill Flugscheiben, flight discs. In Germany at the turn of the century, and particularly after World War I, many secret societies developed. One of these groups was the Vrill Society. In 1917, 4 members of the Vrill Society met in a cafe in Vienna. There was 1 woman and 3 men. The woman was a spiritual medium. They met under a veil of mystery and secrecy. They discussed secret revelations, the coming of the New Age, the Spear of Destiny, the magical violet black stone, and making contact with ancient peoples and distant worlds. Their source of power, they claim, was the black sun, an infinite beam of light which, though invisible to the human eye, exists in antimatter. The Vrill emblem became the black sun, a secret philosophy thousands of years old, and provided the foundation on which the occult practitioners of the Third Reich would later build. The black sun symbol can be found in many Babylonian and Syrian places of worship. They depicted the black sun, the godhead's inner light, in the form of a cross. This was not much different from the Germans' Knight's Cross. The women allegedly channeled information from aliens, after which the Thiel was created. They went on to build various UFOs called the Vrill machines. It allegedly was a saucer-shaped interdimensional time travel machine. Their first flight was allegedly conducted in 1934. Much of their work was done in the Black Forest. Sketch of the Vrill Geist, Spirit, by a medium from the Vrill Society, 1943. The first prototype was built in 1943, and was successfully tested at the Arado Brandenburg hangars. The Thiel Society members were allegedly the first group to attempt the back engineering of an extraterrestrial spacecraft. A German writer, John von Helsing, describes the discovery of a crash saucer in the Black Forest in 1936 and says that this technology was taken and combined with the information the Vrill Society had received through channeling and was made into a further project called the Haunebu. German aircraft historian Henry Stevens states, Haunebu was allegedly the first large flying saucer developed in Germany. According to plans allegedly obtained from classified German SS files, the Haunebu was approximately 75 feet in diameter and probably lifted off for the first time in August of 1939, a few weeks before the outbreak of World War II. The 1967 book Aufbruch von der Zukunft der fantastischen Vernunft by Louis Pauls and Jacques Bergier, published in Switzerland, includes an account of the society. The Vrill information takes up about 1/10 of the volume, the remainder of which details other esoteric speculations, but the authors fail to clearly or explain whether this section is fact or fiction. New publications appeared in the 1990s by the German right-wing author Jan Udo Hulli, writing under pen name Jan van Helsing. The Vrill Society as described by these authors includes many elements common to conspiracy theories, hidden masters, the members of the Vrill Society, and escape by Hitler and other Nazis from Berlin to the South Pole. Flying saucers, secret Nazi inventions, and psychic channeling powers, aliens from Aldebaran. According to these authors, the Vrill Society was founded as the All-German Society for Metaphysics in 1921 to explore the origins of the Aryan race. It was formed by a group of female psychic mediums led by the Thielgesellschaft psychic medium, Vrill and Maria Orsic of Vienna, who claimed to have received communication from Aryan aliens, the Anunnaki, living on Alpha Tauri, in the Aldebaran system. Allegedly, these aliens had visited Earth and settled in Sumeria, and the word Vrill was formed from the ancient Sumerian word Fri, like God. A second medium was Sigrun Kuhnheim, a name etymologically related to Sigrun, a Valkyrie and one of Woden's 9 daughters in Norse legend. Other female members were Trot Blom, Pika Erhart and Gudrun Jensch. All were known as the Ladies of Vrill, aka the Wonder Women of Vrill. The society allegedly taught concentration exercises designed to awaken the forces of Vrill, and their main goal was to achieve Raumflug, spaceflight, to reach Aldebaran. To achieve this, the Vrill Society joined the Thielgesellschaft and DHVSS, Lords of the Blackstone, to fund an ambitious program involving an interdimensional flight machine based on psychic revelations from the Aldebaran aliens. In 1922, Thiel and Vrill societies constructed Germany's very first flight disc, the JFM, Jenseitsflugmaschine, or otherworld flight machine, in Munich, for channeled flight testing that lasted 2 years. This first project was led by W.O. Schumann of the Technical University of Munich. Under his guidance, 7 disc-shaped flying machines with a diameter of 11.5 meters were built. However, the project was halted in 1924 with the last machine dismantled and shipped to Messerschmitt's Augsburg facility, where it was stored for future research. Professor Schumann developed a levitation unit from the research, which was called the Schumann Munich or SM Levitator. Members of the Vrill Society are said to have included Adolf Hitler, Alfred Rosenberg, Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, and Hitler's personal physician, Drive Theodor Morell. These were original members of the Thiel Society, which supposedly joined Vrill in 1919. The NSDAP, Nazi Party, was created by Thiel in 1920, 1 year later. Dr. Krohn, who helped to create the Nazi flag, was also a Thielist. With Hitler in power in 1933, both Thiel and Vrill Gesellschaft allegedly received official state backing for continued disc development programs aimed at both spaceflight and possibly a war machine. The new RFZ, Rundflugzeug, or Round Aircraft series began in 1937, after the Vrill bought the fallow land surrounding the Arado-Brandenburg aircraft facility. RFC discs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 were tested there under Vrill supervision, while Thiel was helped by Special SS Technical Branch Unity IV, which was tasked with developing alternative energies. Thiel worked on a separate disc at a secret location in NW Germany referred to as Hanneberg from 1935 on. As such, their product was known as the Hanneberg device, but this was shortened to Hannebu in 1939 once the disc's Triebwerk engine was perfected. Hannebu I was briefly designated as RFCV when Thiel moved from Hanneberg to Arado-Brandenburg. The Thiel Triebwerk was a revolutionary electromagnetic engine, also known as a Tachionator V. It used a modified Hans Kohler Magnetstromapparat, a gravitic-free energy battery, turned into a converter that was coupled to a Van de Graaff band generator and a Marconi dynamo, spinning tank of heated mercury. Once activated, the Triebwerk produced strong rotating EM fields that affected gravity. The rotating fields also turned the dynamo, creating a reduction of mass at incredible RPMs. Vrill also designed and developed its own Triebwerk by 1941 with the RFCV, which was redesignated Vrill IJ Hunter. After 1941, Hitler forbade secret societies, so both Thiel and Vrill were documented under the SS EIV unit. Vrill also became secretly known as Die Kette, the chain, which refers to the mental links between their members. Vrill had strong contacts with Canaris of the Abwehr, the Aninerb, SS Occult Bureau, and worked with the engineers at Arado. Both the Thiel and Vrill discs were built from 1939 to 1945. Thiel produced the Hannebu I3 series of large discs, while the Vrill series were more concerned with resuming channeled flight. By 1944, construction of a Vrill V-Geist, Spirit, channeled flight disc was achieved, as well as a huge 139-meter-long cylindrical mothership called the Andromeda device. A special unit named Special Bureau 13 was created by the Luftwaffe to officially investigate strange aerial phenomena over the Reich, but unofficially was created to cover up these reports of flight discs and flying cigars. In September 1944, a Me-262 jet pilot caught sight of one of the Andromeda craft and reported it. Special Bureau 13 immediately tried to find evidence of such a device. The Vrill Magic Eye is a mythical Nazi espionage and reconnaissance device supposed to have been developed in 1945. The story is that Rolf Engel of Vrill Gesellschaft developed a miniature electromagnetic gravitic engine and installed it in a lightly armored melon-shaped body about a foot in diameter. The body had a reception antenna, a small television camera, a weapon, and a telescopic arm that held another miniature camera and a microphone. By virtue of its design and connection to Vrill, the Magic Eye was to have had the ability to appear and disappear at will. Such a device would have been suitable for a wide range of military duties that included aerial recon, submarine protection, and especially espionage. While the main body of the probe remained invisible, the telescopic sensor arm could lower its other camera and microphone into our dimension for spying. Vrill Gesellschaft, Vrill Society, symbol. By early 1945, the story goes, Rolf Engel had performed lab tests with the power plant for this device and work was well underway on miniaturizing television equipment. This 293D missile had television guidance and composite aircraft which were being developed at this time. The Argus S-292 target drone had been converted to a remotely piloted vehicle equipped with cameras. These went unnoticed by the Allies and none were shot down. The difficulty would have been in the interdimensional travel and invisibility features. There is no evidence that a functional prototype was ever made. The claim of an ability to travel in some interdimensional mode is similar to Vrill claims of channeled flight with the Jenseitsflugmaschine, Otherworld Flight Machine, and the Vrill Flugscheiben, flight discs. Meanwhile, as the Allies advanced further into the Reich, Vrill planned to evacuate its technology to bases outside of Europe, especially to a secret Antarctic base, Base 211, while their own personal plan was to evacuate their mediums to the stars by channeled flight of the Andromeda. They left in March 1945 and were never found or heard of again. Duada non li toma adout o hatedoi I actantia viatno luania santina nata panda tia ardwaza, bscro sanor timahu hia polak palike, bmwasuenpe de qaip plus, aiva, acta fi, on AAA vitals ipiva. Ame cabinet paper fry for anasada anth bal khth albasada, c4 salamal, cborsten ca mand, collier ai wispandu, let's M43 Maria Orsic's hair helped channel information from the beings of light. Long hair was used to help channel or communicate with these aliens. Ladies of Maria Orsic's Gesellschaft für Metaphysik, All-German Society for Metaphysics, which was renamed Vrill Gesellschaft, Vrill Society. The supreme Germanic goddess and queen of the Aldebaran system. Vrill Doppelsignet disc used for Vrill Gesellschaft identification. Vrill Gesellschaft, Vrill Society, Signet. DHVSS, Lords of the Black Stone and Vrill Society Signet. Vrill and DHVSS Signet. Chapter 6 Vrill and the Black Sun. Peter Moon tells us in his book The Black Sun, on page 172, the Vrill Society began around the same time as the Thiel Society when Karl Haushofer founded the Brüder des Lichts, which means Brothers of the Light. This organization is sometimes referred to as the Luminous Lodge. This group was eventually renamed the Vrill Gesellschaft as it rose in prominence and united three major societies. 1. The Lords of the Blackstone, having emerged from the Teutonic Order in 1917. 2. The Black Knights of the Thiel Society. 3. The Black Sun, later identified as the elite of Heinrich Himmler's SS. Whereas the Thiel Society ended up focusing primarily upon materialistic and political agendas, the Vrill Society put its attention on the other side. A local medium named Maria Orsic began channeling messages in an unknown language and could not transcribe them, so she began meeting with several key members of these societies, along with another medium named Sigrun Kuhnheim. Accordingly, the messages were coming from a being from the star Aldebaran, which has two planets which form the Sumerian Empire. In the Sumerian Empire were two classes of people: the Aryan or master race, and a subservient race which had developed in a negative fashion as a result of mutation from climatic changes. Peter Moon goes on to say, 500 million years ago, the Aryans, known as the Elohim or Elder Race, began to colonize our solar system as Aldebaran became uninhabitable. Marduk aka Marduk, existing in what is today the asteroid belt, was the first to be colonized, then Mars. When they came to Earth, these Aryans were known as the Sumerians. From some of the accounts available, Shambhala appears to have been a center of spiritual enlightenment, very reminiscent of James Hilton's Shangri-La, but others say that it was a center of occult power and arcane teaching. Its leader was thought variously to be either an evil, tyrannical sorcerer king or a god-like lord of the world. We seem to be left with a choice as to which story we prefer to follow, and evidently which path one desires to follow. 2. The evil left, or the good right. Apparently there were two factions, as in Hyperborea, one of which followed the Golden Sun, and the other the Black Sun. The black sun, incidentally, was as prominent an emblem of the Nazi mythos as was the swastika. According to Jean-Claude Freire, author of Nazism et Société Secrète, the people of Hyperborea, after migrating to the Gobi Desert over 6,000 years ago, founded a new center, which they named Agatha. It became a great center of world learning, and people flocked there from all over the world to enjoy its culture and civilization. However, a huge catastrophe supervened, and the Earth's surface was devastated, but the realm of Agatha somehow survived, under the Earth. The legend continues to relate that, as with the original Hyperboreans, the Aryans now split into two factions, one group heading northwest, hoping to return to their lost Hyperborea, and the second going south, where they founded a new secret center under the Himalayas. Jean-Claude Freire concludes, the sons of the outer intelligences split into two groups, one following the right-hand path under the wheel of the golden sun, the other the left-hand path under the wheel of the black sun. The first preserved the center of Agatha, that undefined place of contemplation, of the good, and of the Vrill force. The second supposedly created a new place of initiation at Shambhala, the city of violence in command of the elements and human masses, hastening the arrival of the charnel house of time. According to Peter Moon, in his book The Black Sun, the ultimate concept of Thule is well represented in the myth of it as the capital city or center of Hyperborea, a word which literally means beyond the poles. Hyperborea, a word which literally means beyond the poles. As it is beyond the poles, Hyperborea is positioned as being outside of this dimension. Thule, being in the center, is positioned as the source of all life on Earth. In Greek mythology, Pythagoras was taught sacred geometry by Apollo, a god who was identified as a resident of Hyperborea. In Pythagorean teachings, the Earth itself geometrically unfolds from a void in the center. This void has been recognized by many ancient groups, including the Sumerians, as the Black Sun. In this sense, Thule is synonymous with this black sun. The word swastika itself means source amongst other definitions, and represents eternal cause or the fountain of creation. Accordingly, the Thule Society used the swastika symbol in their log to represent this idea. The black sun is an even more esoteric concept than that of Thule. Represented as the void of creation itself, it is the most senior archetype imaginable. Thus, this namesake was reserved for the elite of the Thule Society. The Black Sun was actually a secret society within the Thule Society. It was senior to other societies. Schwarze Sonne, Black Sun, symbol after World War II and the subsequent occupation of Germany. Allied military commanders were stunned to discover the penetrating depth of the Nazi regime's state secrets. The world's best intelligence organization was not the least of these revelations. Also discovered were massive and meticulous research files on secret societies, eugenics and other scientific pursuits that boggled the imagination of the Allied command. Even more spectacular was an entire web of underground rocket and flying saucer factories with an accompanying technology that still defies ordinary beliefs. A missing U-boat fleet possessing the most advanced submarine technology in the world left many wondering if the Nazis had escaped with yet more secrets or even with Hitler himself. Behind all of these mysteries was an even deeper element, a secret order known to initiates as the Order of the Black Sun, an organization so feared that it is now illegal to even print their symbols and insignia in modern Germany. The Black Sun probes deeper into the secrets of the Third Reich and its Tibetan contacts than any other previous attempt. The Black Sun is an adventure in consciousness that reveals a vast array of new information. From the German flying saucer program to the SS mission into Tibet, we are led on a path that gives us the most insightful look ever into the Third Reich and the holy relics they sought in their ultimate quest, the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail. The SSEIV, Entwicklungsstelle 4, a development unit of the SS Occult Order of the Black Sun, was tasked with researching alternative energies to make the Third Reich independent of scarce fuel oil for war production. Their work included developing alternative energies and fuel sources through coal gasification, research into grain alcohol fuels, less complicated coal-burning engines for vehicles and generators, as well as highly advanced liquid oxygen turbines, total reaction turbines, APE, air-independent propulsion, motors and even electromagnetic gravitic engines. This group developed by 1939 a revolutionary electromagnetic gravitic engine which improved Hans Kohler's free energy machine into an energy converter coupled to a Van de Graaff band generator and Marconi vortex dynamo, a spherical tank of mercury, to create powerful rotating electromagnetic fields that affected gravity and reduced mass. It was designated the Thule Triebwerk, Thrustwork, aka Taschinator V drive, and was to be installed into a Thule-designed flying disc. Since 1935, Thule had been scouting for a remote, inconspicuous, underdeveloped testing ground for such a craft. Thiel found a location in northwest Germany that was known as, or possibly designated as, Hanneberg. At the establishment of this testing ground and facilities, the SS EIV unit simply referred to the new Thiel disc as a product, the H. Gerard Hanneberg device. For wartime security reasons, the name was shortened to Hannebu in 1939 and briefly designated RFCV along with Vrill's machines. At a much later time in the war, as production of these craft was to commence, the Hanneberg site was abandoned in favor of the more suitable Vril Brandenburg aircraft testing grounds. Although designated as part of the RFC series, the Hannebu disc was actually a separate Thiel product constructed with the help of the SS EIV unit, while the RFC series were primarily built at Arado Brandenburg under Vrill direction up to the RFC IV disc. The early Hannebu I craft, of which 2 prototypes were constructed, were 25 meters/82 feet in diameter, had a crew of 8, and could achieve the incredible initial velocity of 4,800 km/h, but at low altitude. Further enhancement enabled the machine to reach 17,000 km/h. Flight endurance was 18 hours. To resist the incredible temperatures of these velocities, a special armor called Victalin was pioneered by SS metallurgists specifically for both the Hannebu and Vrill series of disc craft. The Hannebu I had a double hull of Victalin. The early models also attempted to test out a rather large experimental gun installation, the twin 60mm Kraftstrokanon case, which operated off the Triebwerk for power. It has been suggested that the ray from this weapon made it a laser, but it was not. When a Vrill V was downed by the Russians in 1945, a similar underbelly-mounted case gun was destroyed with debris recovered from the battle site. Post-war, the strange metal balls and tungsten spirals that made up the weapon could not be identified. Mk108 cannon, fixed German Vrill V Geist, Spirit, but recently it has been speculated that the Triebwerk connected balls formed cascade oscillators that were connected to a long barrel-shrouded transmission rod wrapped in a precision tungsten spiral, or coil, to transmit a powerful energy burst suitable to pierce up to 4 inches of enemy armor. The heavy gun installation, however, badly destabilized the disc, and in subsequent Hannebu models lighter MG and MK cannon were supposedly installed, although it is not apparent from any photographic source, being an internal installation of 6 Mk108s in an upper and lower triple gun pack. The Hannebu VL first flew in 1939, and both prototypes made 52 test flights. In 1942, the enlarged Hannebu II of 26 meters or 85 feet in diameter was ready for flight testing. This disc had a crew of 9 and could also achieve supersonic flight of between 6,000 to 21,000 km/h with a flight endurance of 55 hours. Both it and the further developed 32-meter diameter Douce had heat shielding of 2 hulls of Victalin. 7 of these craft were constructed and tested between 1943 to 44. The craft made 106 test flights. German Hannebu II Seton Ball by 1944, the perfected war model, the Hannebu II Douce Dornier SDR Atmosphärenflugzeug, was tested. 2 prototypes were built. These massive machines, several stories tall, were crewed by 20 men. They were also capable of hypersonic speed beyond 21,000 km/h. The SS had intended to produce the machines with tenders for both Junkers and Dornier, but in late 1944/early 1945 Dornier was chosen. The close of the war, however, prevented Dornier from building any production models. Yet larger still was the 71-meter diameter Hannebu L. German Hannebu II Astora alone prototype was constructed before the close of the war. It was crewed by 32 and could achieve speeds of between 7,000 to 40,000 km/h. It had a triple Victalin hull. It is said to have had a flight endurance of between 7 to 8 weeks. The craft made 19 test flights. This craft was to be used for evacuation work for Thiel and Vrill in March 1945. Named Astora after the old Germanic goddess of the East, dawn, rebirth, and resurrection, the overloaded Hannebu II may have been boosted by a cluster of A-9/A-10 rockets to get it into the air with SS General Hans Kammler on board. Subsequent post-war claims that this craft was ultimately used for a suicide mission to Mars is completely unfounded. Even with onboard SS oxygen generators and modified Draeger-Velka pressure suits, there is no way this machine could withstand an 8-month journey to Mars. What would be the purpose anyway? The Gesellschaften were aiming at channeled flight, not conventional space flight. Further plans for a 120-meter diameter Hannebu IV were in the works, but no such craft is known to have been constructed before the end of the war. However, many Hanabu craft were spotted over occupied Germany in the years to follow, among them a craft strongly resembling the Hanabiv by the Bundeswehr in the 1970s. It is believed that all of the mysterious Hanabu craft were evacuated to a sanctuary outside of Third Reich borders, to New Schwabenland, Antarctica Base 211, constructed during the war. German Hanabu IV. In the years following the close of World War II, many Hanabu-shaped disc craft have been spotted all over the world, leading to speculation that either the Third Reich survived in another part of the world, primarily in Argentina or Brazil, or that the victorious Allies had captured the Thiel and Vrill technology and constructed similar craft. The BRD, Federal Republic of Germany, is also suspected of retaining Thiel and Vrill technology, with official designations of Fu-1 and Fu-2 Fliegen Untertassen 1 and 2. The USSR research with the German occult technologies is unknown due to Cold War secrecy. However, the Soviets are believed to have captured several of Schaubürger's repulsion models, Flugkreisel engineer Otto Habermal and Führersturm engineer Gerhard Falker in 1945. Although the Soviets had their own disc designs based on the Suchanov series of Discoplands from 1958 to 62 and a rumored experimental circular wing MiG prototype, the SS Hanabu type might have been experimented with as well, since the Soviets got a good share of drive Franz Philip's beam weaponry in Berlin, which was part of the SS EIV technical branch. Who knows what other EIV secrets they got in Berlin as well. Chapter 7. Maria Orsic. Beings of Light. Maria Orsic's father, Tomislav Orsic, was born at his parents' residence, which was located near St. Stefan's Cathedral in the city of Zagreb, Yugoslavia, now Croatia. He was an architect by trade and worked as an engineer at an office located in Banjela Senticent Square, aka Ban Trg Banagilisi Senta, Trg Republic. In searching for a more promising future, he immigrated to Germany. During a trip to Vienna, Austria, Tomislav met an exceptionally beautiful young ballerina by the name of Sabine. They immediately fell in love and got married. Shortly thereafter, they began planning their future. To Sabine, Vienna was her only home, with its opera houses, ballets, waltz and arts. It was the center of her world. Besides, she had always dreamed of becoming a famous ballerina. Unfortunately for her, all that changed when Tomislav could not find a job in Vienna. So, Sabine agreed with her husband that it might be best if they moved to Germany. However, they both agreed that it would be best to wait a little longer, for Sabine was pregnant. On December 1, 1898, Sabine Orsic gave birth to a stunning blonde girl she named Maria. 6 months later, the Orsic family moved to Baden, Germany, where they lived for 9 months, and then they moved to Berlin. In Berlin, they rented an apartment house at Wilhelmstrasse, not far from the square Wilhelmplatz, which no longer exists. There was nothing unusual or exceptionally spectacular about Maria Orsic's childhood. She grew up happy in a traditional and healthy family. She attended a Catholic school, and in 1915, at the age of 17, Maria graduated with honors. However, all that was about to change. On Saturday, February 10, 1917, at the age of 19, Maria Orsic collapsed, falling into a coma-like state that lasted for several hours. As soon as she regained consciousness and began to regain her senses, Maria told her mother that she saw tall beings of light not far from this world who came to her and said they would be back once she had started to feel better. Maria further stated that during her unconscious state of trance, 2 tall beings talked to her in a language she could not understand. Her mother thought at first that her daughter was just deeply affected by what had happened to her, and said nothing. Maria, however, had become absolutely convinced that something very extraordinary had just took place in her life. The harder Maria tried to understand or comprehend what was happening to her, the more confused she became. Until the next day. Sunday, February 11, 1917, when Maria once again fell into a deep trance-like state. Now this was the event that Maria would never forget. On that Sunday, the strange beings of light appeared to her again and told her that very soon she would be receiving a very important message from them. The beings of light, as she described them, warned her not to tell anyone about what she had experienced, except for 4 female psychic mediums named Sigrun Kuhnheim, Gudrun Jenst, Trot Blom and Heike Erhardt. Maria then hurried to meet with these 4 female psychic mediums, and to talk about her extraordinary experiences. From the very beginning, the 4 women did not seem to be surprised at all when they first met Maria. Unexpectedly, they were all very understanding about what happened to Maria and even told her that they were expecting her. Maria became confused and perplexed. Then one of the ladies, named Sigrun, reassured her that everything was going to be all right and expect to hear from them, beings of light, again. In the afternoon of Monday, February 19, 1917, Maria Orsic was revisited again for a third time, but this time the beings of light gave her a clear message. They revealed themselves to her as messengers, extraterrestrials, from Aldebaran, Alpha Tauri, a solar system 68 light-years away from Earth, located in the constellation Taurus, in front of the Hyades star cluster. The extraterrestrials communicated with her telepathically using mind transmission. Maria was able to receive mediumistically, as she would later explain to members of a society she would soon create with the help of the 4 other women. The extraterrestrials' messages should be considered seriously, and translating the language of the Aldebaran aliens using Anak lexicon and comparative dictionaries of Sumerian, Akkadian, Assyrian and Ugaritic Phoenician will allow us to understand their alien world, their technology and possibly the place of man's existence on the landscape of the cosmos. Maria's technical data from her messages was later checked and approved by Germany's top scientist, and rechecked by the SS military scientists, engineers and the Third Reich's leading airplane designers and builders. This technical data she received from the extraterrestrials from Aldebaran was not available anywhere else, only from Maria Orsic. Maria claimed that she received the extraterrestrials' messages in 2 languages totally unknown to her. One was a German Templar script, and the second was Anak, which part of it resembled in Sumerian Akkadian Ugaritic cuneiform, and other parts appeared to be early Phoenician writings in the form of the Bible script. Anak was considered by the early inhabitants of the Middle East, Near East, Anatolia and India as the language of the Anunnaki gods. At this point Maria needed help. She could not read or understand the Templar script or the Anak Sumerian Akkadian Ugaritic cuneiform script. The technical data was just too complicated and she was unable, at first, to comprehend and logically process what she was seeing and hearing, even though her channeling and mediumistic abilities were almost perfect. So, she asked her father if he could explain to her, at least, the scientific material, data and technical drawings and images, sketches and blueprints she received telepathically, being himself an engineer. He replied by saying, "You need to put everything in writing, to draw on papers, anything and everything you are seeing in your head." This was so he could see what she was talking about. It took Maria 2 days to write down everything she heard and saw in her mind, dozens of illustrations and sketches of flying machines, circular wings, wheels, formulae, numbers, charts, measurements, and rushed these drawings to her father to show him what she had written down. Unsurprisingly, he was baffled. He did not know what to say, but fortunately, during this same time, he was working temporarily at the University of München, where he had previously met Drive. Professor W.O. Schumann, a famous scientist of that era, who was teaching at the university. Maria's father had told her that he would talk to Professor Schumann and ask him for any guidance that he could share on this difficult subject. Spacecraft channeled by the Wonder Women of Vrill. When Professor Schumann asked Maria about the number 33.33 which appeared numerous times in her sketches, Maria replied, "This is how we get there. From here." Apparently, he did not understand what she meant. So, she explained to him that the space-time line situated at 33.33 degrees on and around the Earth is where the stargates are located. And the only way to escape the Earth's gravity and travel to the stars is by entering and exiting a 33.33 degrees stargate. She also added, "The extraterrestrials have used it before, it is a shortcut to other planets, stars and galaxies." Maria afterwards became obsessed with the number 33.33. The Nephilim, or sons of God, who were mentioned in the Bible, lived with the ancient Phoenicians for 33 years and stayed 33 days in Tyre, Sidon, Byblos and Baalbek. The number 33.33 also represents the period of the Tanawar or Tanwar, which means enlightenment. The number 33.33 became the most important and the most secret number in Phoenician occultism, architecture, and numerology because it refers to their god's place of origin, Jabal Haramoun, Mount Hermon in Lebanon, which is located exactly at 33.33 degrees east and 33.33 degrees north. The number is equally important in the Masonic rite King Hiram created with the assistance of King Solomon. This number is closely related to the compass and square, which were given to the Phoenicians as a gift from the Anunnaki gods. The space-time line situated at 33.33 degrees on and around Earth is where the stargates are located. They are believed to be shortcuts or wormholes to other planets. /SN/4 Heasuras Minds Awayam Korad Valim Sosnikov // me of Simsamie /y. Highlight. According to Jan van Helsing's book Secret Societies, their power and influence in the 20th century, this strange history began later that very Same year in 1917, during World War I, when the occultist Baron Rudolf von Siebatendorf the Gurge, disciple Karl Haushofer, the ace pilot Lothar Weiss, Prelate Gernot of the secret Societas Templi Margini, the inheritors of the Knights Templar, and Maria Orsic, a transcendental medium from Zagreb, met in Vienna. They all had extensively studied the Golden Dawn, its teachings, rituals, and especially its knowledge about Asian secret lodges. Siebatendorf and Haushofer were experienced travelers of India and Tibet and much influenced by the teachings and myths of those places. During the First World War, Karl Haushofer had made contacts with one of the most influential secret societies of Asia, the Tibetan Yellow Hats, D.G. Lugs Pa. This sect was formed in 1409 by the Buddhist reformer Tsongkhap Pa. Haushofer was initiated and swore to commit suicide should his mission fail. The contacts between Haushofer and the Yellow Hats led in the 20s to the formation of Tibetan colonies in Germany. The four young people hoped that during these meetings in Vienna they would learn something about the secret revelatory texts of the Knights Templar and also about the secret fraternity Die Herren vom Schwarzenstein, the Lords of the Black Stone. Later in September 1917, Baron von Siebatendorf allegedly met with leaders and members of this mysterious Lords of the Black Stone fraternity in Utersburg to receive the power of the Black-Purple Stone, after which the secret society was named. Whatever happened in September 1917 appeared to have been successful, for in 1918 a group formed around von Siebatendorf in Bad Aibling, which would become the notorious Thiel Society. It is here that scientific magic, astrology, occultism and Templar knowledge as well as Golden Dawn practices like Tantra, yoga and Eastern meditation were all combined. And among this potent mix was also a tincture of Messianism, for the Thiel-Gesellschaft also believed, following the revelation of Isis, in a coming savior, German, Highland or the Holy One, the third Sargon who would bring to Germany glory and a new Aryan culture. Among the doctrines held by the Thiel-Gesellschaft that would lay behind the Nazi ideology were an Aryo-Germanic construction of religion by the philosopher Guido von List, a leaning towards the anti-Old Testament views of an early Christian heresy known as Marcionism. This was augmented by the esoteric history of the Aryans believed by the Thiel-Gesellschaft, a history reconstructed from ancient German and Scandinavian myths. Chief among these was the belief in Hyperborea, the continent populated by the ancient Aryans, with its capital city of Ultima Thule, both of which were located in the highest north. Moreover, these ancient Aryans were space travelers from a planet in the star system of Aldebaran, the main star in the constellation of Taurus. One of the members was Maria Orsic. This stunning beauty and unique psychic medium was not a secluded personality. She was very well known to many celebrities of that era and had many powerful friends and admirers. In high places, famous and influential people like Charles Lindbergh, Henry Ford, Nikola Tesla, Eva Peron and Marshal Tito of Yugoslavia. She was also known by the most illustrious figures in spiritualism, parapsychological and psychical research in Great Britain. This was all reported by Allied intelligence and was documented by OSS operatives in Europe. Although Maria Orsic's interests were in the supernatural and the occult, she shared her knowledge and interest exclusively with members of her society. She was well known and had influential friends outside her circle who were very fond of her. Even the leaders of Madame Blavatsky's Theosophical Society of Berlin, New York and India were in constant contact with Maria Orsic. It was a well-known fact in the metaphysical and spiritualism societies of that time that one of Blavatsky's associates, who was an expert linguist in Hebrew, Phoenician and ancient Sumerian, took a leading part in the translation and explanation of the extraterrestrial messages Maria had received. Only later was it revealed to be a dead language of the Middle East which contained Sumerian, Akkadian, Ugaritic and Phoenician scripts. Some passages were written in cuneiform and others in a script similar to the Biblo script, and Anak, a language used by the ancient Anunnaki gods to communicate with the early Mesopotamians and Phoenicians. It was most likely used in Atlantis as well. Maria Orsic was the first person to have received channeled messages from beings of another planet. Maria Orsic never joined the Nazi Party and was never involved with Nazi mysticism. She was not a German, her father being born in Zagreb, Yugoslavia, and her mother being born in Vienna, Austria. She was a transcendental psychic and a metaphysical medium, solely concerned, since age 17, with her contacts with a group of beings of light from another galactic civilization. She was also the founder of the Alldeutsche Gesellschaft für Metaphysik, All-German Society for Metaphysics, later renamed the Society of Freilerinnen and Women, better known as the Vrill Society. The Vrill Society was a spiritual, metaphysical group involved with channeling contact with extraterrestrials from Alpha Tauri in the Aldebaran system. The group had no secret Nazi militarism agenda. Maria Orsic channeled telepathic messages before World War II. Zagreb was in Yugoslavia. It was the city from which Maria Orsic's father was born. At that time, Marshal Tito was the leader of Yugoslavia, who later sided with Joseph Stalin against Nazi Germany. Marshal Tito had always stayed in touch with Maria and even informed her about SS Reichsführer Heinrich Himmler's secret intentions of eliminating her. However, upon hearing this, Dr. Joseph Goebbels, Hermann Göring and Joachim von Ribbentrop did not buy it, and her life was spared. Misinformed antagonists and those who wanted to destroy Maria Orsic accused her of being an anti-Semite and sympathizing with the Theosophical Society, which they claimed was an anti-Jewish organization. They have also claimed that Maria Orsic's society as well as the Thule Society adopted the Nazi swastika as their symbol. Little did they know that the swastika is a very ancient Hindu symbol, and Blavatsky personally chose the Indian swastika as a metaphysical symbol of the Theosophical Society. She established in New York in 1875, decades before the Nazi Party was created, and years before Adolf Hitler was even born. It is well known today that one member of the Theosophical Society did take credit for suggesting the use of the swastika as the symbol of the Nazi Party. His name was Aleister Crowley, the Satanist, who in his own handwriting stated that he suggested the symbol of the swastika in 1925 or 1926. Maria Orsic, founder of the Vrill Gesellschaft, Vrill Society. Maria Orsic was not surprised to see the swastika become the symbol of the Nazi Germany. To Maria, the swastika was an ancient symbol of enlightenment and positive cosmic energy. However, Maria never did adopt the swastika as a symbol of her Vrill Society. When Maria first needed money to finance the project of building her Vrill spacecraft, she never approached the Nazis, the SS or any of Hitler's military to obtain funds of any kind. In fact, she contacted scientists, financiers and intellectuals who had no ties to Adolf Hitler. As a result, Himmler and his SS officers hated her. Himmler became very suspicious of her and placed her under a constant surveillance by his SS and Gestapo. Himmler further did not like the idea of having women in charge of military operations and activities related to science and technology. Frankly, he did not trust women at all. Himmler was very suspicious of 4 women in particular: Zara Leander, Princess Stephanie Marie von Hohenlohe, being Jewish, Leni Riefenstahl, and Maria Orsic. This insane paranoid behavior was mainly due to the fact that all these 4 women were close to Hitler, except Maria Orsic, who hated the materialistic aspect of the Third Reich. In contrast, it must be stated that Dr. Joseph Goebbels and Field Marshal Göring were charming with women. Heinrich Himmler had always felt threatened by the ever-increasing influence of Maria Orsic and her Wonder Women of Vrill. On 2 different occasions he had told Adolf Hitler that she was not to be trusted because she was unstable, and she also had close ties to the Jews. Himmler also mentioned the name of Princess Stephanie Maria von Hohenlohe, the Jew. Little did he know that Princess Stephanie was a close friend to Adolf Hitler, whom he showered with many gifts. In fact, Hitler overlooked her Jewish roots altogether and gave her a castle in Austria as a token of his admiration and for her services to the Third Reich as a Nazi spy. On Orsic, Hitler stated, "We need her for the time being, but keep an eye on her." And he added, "I don't trust secret societies." Himmler's SS General Jacob Sparrenberg and SS General Hans Kammler always kept Maria Orsic in constant isolation, preventing her from ever having access to the Führer. Although the Vrill Society meetings were only exclusively available to members Maria recruited personally, Himmler's SS officers and Gestapo agents were always present at all the secret meetings. For Himmler knew very well that Maria Orsic's primordial interest in building a super-flying machine was of a metaphysical nature. She never intended to contribute a thing to the Nazi war efforts. Therefore, Himmler never considered her as a true Nazi. In fact, Maria Orsic did not believe in its cause, even though many of her channeled messages and communications to associates would allude to the idea of an Aryan race and its Enlightenment superiority. In 1972, Gudrun Berwitz, the daughter of Heinrich Himmler, stated, "Maria Orsic was never a true German, for she never believed in our cause. As to her disappearance, I have no idea. Probably she died amid her illusions and fantasies." This had all started with an occult metaphysical mysticism psychical movement created by Maria Orsic, the psychic medium and founder of the Freilirennen, Vrill Society. It was based upon messages she claimed she received from extraterrestrials from Aldebaran, which contained complicated technical data and precise instructions on how to build a super UFO flying machine. Maria's secret messages became the ultimate purpose and the driving goal of her Vrill Gesellschaft that originated with the 5 psychic mediums, Maria, Sigrun, Trot, Gudrun and Heike, all known as the Vrill Chefen. Their goal was to communicate with these extraterrestrials and to achieve spaceflight by any means possible to reach the beings of light from the Aldebaran system located in the Taurus the Bull constellation, about 68 light-years from Earth. To accomplish this goal required two things to happen. First, to translate a series of psychic images of a flight machine received by Maria Orsic in 1919, and secondly, to meet with other occult groups that could possibly finance such an endeavor once the images were deciphered. For the Vrill Society, formed by women based on metaphysics, the thought and act of joining with other powerful male occult groups was almost unthinkable. Yet in 1919, the Vrill Society met with the Thiel Society and Die Herren vom Skorzenstein, DHVSS or the Lords of the Black Stone, members in an effort to obtain funding for their vision by 1921. The Thiel Society had the industrial influence and financial resources to fund such a project, so an agreement was reached to join societies in an effort to build the strange flying machine which became known as the Jenseitsflugmaschine Otherworld Flight Machine. Under the code letters JFM, the machine was contracted in secret in Munich. It was first constructed in 1922 in a barn and rolled out into a field for channeled flight testing. Despite 2 years at attempting to achieve channeled flight through high-powered frequency field oscillations produced by strong electromagnetic forces within the craft, the occultists could not open what they termed a white hole in space-time and pass through, reaching the Aldebaran system and the beings of light that had contacted them. Professor W.O. Schumann led the JFM project but decided to scrap all his research in 1924. The JFM machine was dismantled and sent to Augsburg for storage at a hangar in a Messerschmitt's facility, where it was either destroyed or later moved up to Peenemünde and reassembled for further study. No one can confirm either story. However, not all of their research was in vain. Professor Schumann managed to develop a levitator unit from it along with his practical experience he had with generating increasingly intensified electromagnetic fields. 9 years later in 1933, Adolf Hitler, a Thiel member and occultist, became Chancellor of Germany. This gave both the Thiel and Vrill Gesellschaft a second chance to further develop their spacecraft with the state-approved RFC, Rundflugzeug/Round Aircraft, program which was also led by Professor Schumann. The RFC program started in 1937 and produced 7 models. Heinrich Himmler's SS had already become involved with the Thiel Haunebu development program in 1935 before the RFC series began. In 1939, the SS used Hans Kohler's adapted gravitic battery and the applied ideas of Nikola Tesla to come up with a revolutionary new engine pioneered by Thiel, the Thiel Triebwerk, aka Tascheneder V. Vrill had also perfected the Slovitator and invented their own Triebwerk, thrustwork, in 1941 with the RFC-V. This brought about the abandonment of the RFC series and introduced Maria Orsic's Haunebu and Vrill series of craft. The Haunebu I, briefly listed as a RFC design, was dropped in 1939 and the RFC-V was redesigned Vrill I Jaeger, Hunter, in 1941. German Vrill I Jaeger, Hunter. At this time both societies came under the control of the SS-EIV, Entwicklungsstelle-V, unit in 1941, under Hitler's order that all secret societies would be banned. This unit was known as the technical branch of the SS, which was tasked with developing alternative energies. Not only did this include alternative power through synthetic fuels but also with generating power fields that could be used to win the war. Thus, Maria Orsic's channeled flying discs were seen as a potentially rewarding war weapon, termed as the new Deutsche Wunderwaffe, German wonder weapon. Fortunately, both types of flying discs were incredibly complex and difficult to control in flight. A special celestial navigational system channeled by Maria Orsic and built by both Siemens and EIG had to be developed to fly the machines, which at first could only make turns of 22.5, 45, and 90 degrees. Control was only possible through magnetic field shifting, which used impulsors that transferred power to different parts of the electromagnetic rings rapidly, forcing very violent rotating electromagnetic fields inside the spacecraft to move accordingly, changing instantly the direction of the craft. Maximum velocities in these craft proved to be a problem as well and required special SS metallurgists, alchemists, to create a heat-resistant armor called Victalin that could withstand the heat friction of speeds well over 7,000 km/h. With both the Haunebu and Vrill craft reaching their full potential by 1943-1944, it was decided that Vrill would once again attempt to build a functioning Raumschiff, but this time it would be built by the SS with all the resources of the SS state within a state, including slave labor and safe facilities. Due to the immensity of this project, a special unit was formed to build just this type, the SS-EV, EV, unit. The Raumschiff was to be called the Andromeda Jurat, Andromeda device. Work on two of these massive 139-meter long and 30-meter diameter flying cigars probably began with great effort in early 1943 in an above-ground heavily camouflaged shelter similar to that of the old Zeppelin hangars. These spacecraft were designed to hold both a Hanabui or IV disc in one large bay with two other smaller Frilli or two discs in a secondary bay, both accessed from the side of each craft. Each spacecraft was to be crewed by 130 and were to be armored with a quadruple-layered Fick Talon hull. The EV unit nicknamed them as male and female Freyr and Freya after the Norse god and goddess. German Andromeda Gerät. The propulsion systems were located at both the fore and aft sections of the Andromeda spacecraft would be beyond the last Hanabu-type fuel Tashnader Philic drive. These craft were to have four massive power units, two Tashnaders I at the front and two at the rear with four additional large SM Leviator units located in pairs on the top and bottom of each spacecraft which sat on a series of large underbody skids to support the massive weight. It is generally assumed that those engines were of the same electromagnetic gravitic type, but other Allied intelligence officers believe that they might have been photonic based on witness accounts of one sighting of a large spacecraft flying with a massive bright light source emitted from the rear. Thiel might have simply used the Tashnader term to describe an evolution of energy drives that might have varied in the later models. Although designed as an armed flying vessel with provision for 5 turrets armed with powerful Kraftstrahl Kanon strong ray cannon, it is doubtful but not totally out of the question that any armament actually made it onto either of the two prototypes under construction. It must be noted here that captured photos during World War II by the Allies did show various types of armament attached to several of the flying discs. When the United States Army came upon one of the uncompleted flying disc in 1945, the craft was first mistaken as some sort of radio tower due to the strange antennas protruding from the craft. The immense size of the uncompleted spacecraft did not reveal its true purpose until someone actually climbed up on top of it and immediately spotted a cockpit with very thick glass that was shattered. The semi-completed craft, painted gray with no markings, was heavily damaged as the Germans retreated, taking with them all of the prototype-sensitive navigation equipment and the strange propulsion system. This caused a lot of damage to the craft except for the two open exposed bays, which were empty of any Hanabu or Frill discs. Captured photos seem to indicate that the other prototype Freya, or one similar to it, was completed and flew sometime in 1944/1945. The exotic craft was designed for a speed of 300,000 km/h. Unfortunately, everything changed as soon as the SS took control of the metaphysical efforts of Orsic and her associates. The result was that the SS senior officers murdered 60 German scientists who were working on the final prototypes of the Die Glocke, the Bell UFO, when they had become convinced that Germany had lost the war. Fearing that their secret UFO technology would fall into the hands of the Soviet army, SS officers shot many of the leading engineers. Those few that managed to escape, just 3 days before the Red Army troops entered Berlin, vanished from the face of the earth, taking with them the most important documents and blueprints of the latest versions of their UFOs, stealth supersonic bombers, jet fighters, and other secret miracle weapons. Eku Zeros Waldo R.E. Lidisiki Sensil Eel ____ Gating W. Shorg Nazi Bell Kecksburg Acorn Die Glocke, the Bell in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania UFO 1965. The most formidable person in all these different scenarios of Germany's UFO research and the history of ufology and extraterrestrials contacts was and still is the leader of the Frill Society, Maria Orsic. Maria was most unique and extraordinary woman on many levels. How does one come to this conclusion about Maria Orsic? Simply, that there are many existing official documents, statements, reports, pieces of evidence, testimonies, and personal accounts on Maria Orsic. Unfortunately, most of Maria Orsic's personal reports and documents were either seized or destroyed by the retreating SS and Gestapo. The reports and documents seized from Germany's drawers and vaults were nowhere to be found. Simply put, many were misplaced, displaced, buried somewhere, forgotten, intentionally erased and destroyed, and as a result, they were lost forever. Perhaps, it is safe to assume that Maria Orsic's UFO files were lost amid piles and mountains of other lost files. Or, maybe our government does not want us to know anything about Maria Orsic and the Wonder Women of Frill. This could be a possibility, especially when the reports of extremely important German scientists who were later recruited by the United States under the secrecy of Operation Paperclip and captured German generals who identified Maria Orsic, her Frill Society, and the German engineers she worked with, some being war criminals, could, years later, jeopardize national security, tarnish the image and credibility of our armed forces, and embarrass our corrupted form of government. This should not be so surprising. Destroying files of people of interest, altering their identity, and making people disappear happens all the time. It is the author's personal belief that the SS confiscated or destroyed a great portion of the files they had on Maria Orsic and the Vrill Society, taking most of her sketches, blueprints, instructions, and technical data of her superflying machine, Merkaba, before the end of the Second World War, fearing that Maria's files would fall into the hands of their enemies. But fortunately, some of Maria Orsic's and her medium's friends' sketches survived the destruction, and were found and preserved in the top-secret files of Miss NKVD and the OSS. In conclusion, if one did escape with the most secret files in March 1945, that one most likely had the Vrill Chefen aboard and achieved channeled flight. Their final destination? No one knows, possibly the Aldebaran system. German Hanabu II Astora filmed in 1944 by German pilot Rudolf Opitz from an elevated watchtower at the Peenemünde test site facility. Chapter 8 The Shining One Some major differences in beliefs between Maria Orsic's Vrill Gesellschaft, Vrill Society, Gesellschaft, Vrill Society, and DHVSSR, that Adolf Hitler and Napoleon Bonaparte were heroes in the eyes of members of Gesellschaft and DHVSS. Maria did not believe in heroes made from flesh and blood. To her, only the spiritual beings of light are worth admiration and reverence. Maria's society only wanted to build a UFO to travel to the Aldebaran system and to remain in constant contact with them. She was opposed to war and using the new technology to win the war. The Gesellschaft and DHVSS members were deeply involved with Hitler's development of mass destruction weapons and Himmler's extermination of the Jews. They were anti-Semite. Maria condemned such activities and refused to become part of Hitler's and Himmler's war machine. The Gesellschaft and DHVSS members sought ancient Agartha, which later turns out to be in Antarctica. Maria only sought Aldebaran. Maria also believed that the Aldebaran extraterrestrials descended in ancient Mesopotamia and created the first civilization of the ancient world. The other societies believed that their origin was rooted in a super-Aryan race, a race of gods who lived in Atlantis, Hyperborea, Mu and other sacred places on the earth, and created the greatest civilizations on earth. The ladies of Vrill usually dressed very modestly in their secret meetings and also in their regular life. Occasionally they would wear necklaces with an engraving of the Vrill sign and in very rare instances, a portrait of Maria Orsic. The other societies usually had ritual ceremonies in ancient castles, wore medieval robes, and some were dressed as medieval knights. No particular robes or outfits were ever required by Maria's Vrill Society. Maria's society practiced meditation, psychic medium seances, mind transmission techniques, channel telepathy, and occasionally the labyrinth walking technique of which the other societies had never heard of. Maria and her ladies of Vrill were revolutionary in their thoughts and beliefs. They criticized the established social rules that govern the German society, they fought against the culture they inherited, and rebelled against the times they lived in. The other two societies were very conservative and rigidly traditional in their beliefs and lifestyles. Some were traditional and others were indoctrinated by Nazi militarism, which added to their social rules and beliefs. Maria's society consisted only of female psychic mediums, channelers, and none of them were members of the Nazi Party. The extraterrestrials Maria Orsic referred to as beings of light were from Aldebaran. In 1972, NASA sent a message to the people of Aldebaran and another one via Pioneer 10, which is approx. 68 light-years from Earth. They physically resemble the Anunnaki and the Igigi, Pleiadians. These extraterrestrials are quite often referred to as the Nordics, simply because they were described as being tall with blonde hair. Their ancestors, the ancient Anunnaki, were giants with black hair. The Igigi, better known as the Pleiadians, resemble the Anunnaki. They were also ancient giants with black and blonde hair. Later the fallen angels who descended in ancient Phoenicia on Mount Hermon used the 33.33-degree Stargate line. Through Maria Orsic, the Anunnaki have revealed to us that several planets in our galaxy, as well as in the Ash.Ta.Rai, Aldebaran, constellation, are positioned on a 33.33-degree line which serves as a backup gateway to other galaxies and dimensions. This is the same 33.33-degree line that was mentioned by Maria Orsic. The Ash.Ta.Rai, Aldebaran, constellation has millions upon millions of stars and planets, and many of them have a physical stargate. The Anunnaki call it an opening on multiple universes and dimensions, including the astronomical bodies of the physical galaxies and celestial galaxies that escape time and space, even before time was created. Since time existed as another dimension outside the landscape of the physical universe. This is usually incomprehensible to our modern human mind. The home planet of the Anunnaki is called Sumi or in Ash.Ta.Rai, Alpha Tauri, which is also the word the Anunnaki used to describe it. Alpha Tauri is known to the Arabs as Aldebaran, and Aldebaran is known to the Anunnaki as Ash.Ta.Rai. The Aldebaran beings of light Maria Orsic was in contact with was not the ancient Anunnaki, but were descendants of the ancient Anunnaki. In other words, they shared the same galactic genetic genes. As you may already know through the author Zecharia Sitchin's books, the ancient Anunnaki god Ea, Enki, splash-landed in what is today the Persian Gulf, and created the first cities in this region of Mesopotamia. Some of the ancient cities created and ruled by the Anunnaki were called Eridu, Uruk, Nippur, Nineveh, Lagash, Ur, etc. These early city-states and their civilizations are mentioned in the ancient scriptures and on the ancient slabs, cylinder seals, and clay tablets of the Middle East in the ancient Sumerian Akkadian culture epics written in cuneiform and even referenced to in the Bible. Maria Orsic was correct when she stated that the Aldebarans, beings of light, created the first civilization in Mesopotamia. Most people today claim that Nibiru is the planet of the Anunnaki and the ancient alien gods because the Sumerian tablets and Zecharia Sitchin tell us so. In fact, the Sumerian epics never mention Nibiru as the home planet of the Anunnaki. There are no passages or references of any kind in the ancient records that mention Nibiru as the home planet of the Anunnaki. So, where do we get the Sumerian Akkadian word Nibiru from? The answer is that the Sumerian Akkadian scribes used the word Nibiru, originally spelled Ni.Be.Ru, as a name for the planet Marduk, which was destroyed and became the asteroid belt. It was named after the Anunnaki god Marduk, who is even sometimes called Nibiru. In the Epic of Enuma Elish, Tablet 7, lines 124-125, in the Akkadian Sumerian text translation we get, Dnibiru Nibi or Warsiti Lu Tainma. The translation is, let him be the holder of the crossing of heavens and earth. Note, let him means Nibiru or Marduk the Anunnaki god. Also in the Epic of Enuma Elish, Tablet 7, lines 126, 130-131. It is translated by Assyriologists as follows, let Nibiru be the marker holder of heaven and earth crossing place. Appearing in lines 130-131, Akkadian/Sumerian text translation, Dnibiru Kakabu U or Sena U Supu. Translation, Ni.Be.Ru is his star, which he made appear in the heavens. Note, his star refers to Marduk. On Tablet 5, line 6, of the Epic of Enuma Elish in Akkadian Sumerian text translation, Dni.Be.Ru ana Aduarixi Suan or Usar Sid Man Zad as. Translation, he promptly set the position, place, of Nibiru to fix their limits, boundaries. Note, he refers to Marduk. There, refers to planets or stars. Interesting information follows in line 8, he, Marduk, fixed the station of Bel and Ea along with him. Line 9, he, Marduk, opened great gates, star gates on both sides. In Tablet 7, line 109, let his name Marduk by Nibiru, the capturer of the midst. Also in Tablet 7, line 126, the stars of heaven, let him Marduk set their course, let him, Marduk, shepherd all the gods like sheep. In the Book of Ramadosh, Scroll 21, Sifr, Chapter 12, Ni.Be.Ru Ina Ashtri, Aldebaran, Mina Kalka. Translation, Ni.Be.Ru Marduk from Ashtri, Aldebaran, was created. Also in the Kitabu Ilmu al-Danya, Book of the Knowledge of the World, Fazal Ashra, Chapter 10, Wamin Ashtri Aldebaran Berazat Ni.Be.Ru, Kokabel Inak, Asayat el-Koin and Kalakin el-Bashar. Translation, and from Ashtri, Aldebaran, emerged Ni.Be.Ru, Marduk, the star of the Anunnaki, masters of the universe and creators of the human race. The word Nibiru is always shown in the early text as having either the prefix Mul or the prefix D. These two prefixes were usually used in Sumerian and Akkadian cuneiform text to refer to a divine status of something or somebody. So when we see Nibiru written as Dni.Be.Ru or Mun.Be.Ru, we immediately understand that Nibiru is divine. This was a linguistic standard used by the ancient Sumerians and Akkadians. The Sumerian Akkadian clay tablets are very confusing. In some passages, the texts refer to Ni.Be.Ru as a star or planet, asteroid belt. In other passages, Ni.Be.Ru is a deity, the Anunnaki god Marduk. Ancient Sumerian clay tablet. In studying these ancient Mesopotamian tablets, we must keep in mind that the ancient Anunnaki gods did not always get along. As the late Zecharia Sitchin stated in his books, the gods made war on each other. If this is true, then we have a separation or dividing line between the gods that are considered good and the gods who are considered evil. Remember that according to the ancient Hebrews, the evil god was from Babylon, which was ruled by the evil god called Moloch by the ancient Hebrew, or Marduk by the ancient Sumerians. So, in the eyes of the ancient Babylonians, Marduk was their good god. In 1902, L.W. King provided us with the following translation of tablets 5 and 7 of the Epic of Enuma Elish, Epic of Creation. From the 5th tablet we read, He, Marduk, made the stations for the great gods, the stars, their images as the stars of the zodiac, he fixed. He ordained the year and into sections he divided it, for the 12 months he fixed 3 stars. After he had the days of the year images, he founded the station of Nibiru, planet Marduk, to determine their bounds, that none might err or go astray. He set the station of Bel and Ea along with him. He opened great gates, star gates on both sides, he made strong the bolt on the left and on the right. In the midst thereof he fixed the zenith, the moon god, Enki, he caused to shine forth, the night he entrusted to him. He appointed him, a being of the night, to determine the days. In the 7th tablet, we read, He, Marduk, named the 4 quarters of the world, mankind he created, the creator of earth. May he hold the beginning and the future, may they pay homage unto him, saying, He who forced his way through the midst of Tiamat without resting, let his name be Nibiru, Marduk, the Caesar of the midst. For the stars of heaven he upheld the paths, he shepherded all the gods like sheep. He conquered Tiamat, he troubled and ended her life. In the future of mankind, when the days grow old, may this be heard without ceasing, may it hold sway forever. Since he, Marduk, created the realm of heaven and fashioned the firm earth. The Aldebaran extraterrestrials are the offspring of the ancient Anunnaki, which visited the earth hundreds of thousands of years ago. They not only created the first civilizations, but they lived on the earth for thousands of years before eventually returning to their planet Sumi-Ur in the Aldebaran system. However, some Anunnaki remained stuck on Earth and could not return home. Consequently, they lost their extraterrestrial genes and began to look like humans over a long period of time. Yet, they were very advanced and created many wonders on Earth. Many of the offspring of the Anunnaki gods called demigods or ancient giants were killed by the Great Deluge. However, as the Bible states, many still existed in the land known as Canaan. For IAR Ra-E acta ers pi Anunnaki gods on cylinder seal. An interesting scene from a Babylonian cylinder seal shows the Anunnaki god Enki with 2 streams of water emerging from his shoulders, and the Sumerian sun god Udu, Shamash the sun god in Akkadian, Shemesh in Phoenician. In the center we see Inanna, Ishtar in Akkadian, Ashtoreth in Phoenician. In this scene Enki is shown stepping on dry land, a gesture symbolizing his supreme authority over the earth. The dry land as depicted in this cylinder refers also to ramparts protecting the cities of his many kingdoms. From the ramparts emerge a stream of fishes, symbols of all life forms in the seas. Thus, his authority extends to dry lands and the seas of the earth. The Anunnaki can easily shape-shift themselves. This is necessary for climatic and atmospheric reasons. Each planet has its own climate, temperature and atmosphere. Consequently, the body must adapt to these environment conditions. When they visit Earth, the Anunnaki slightly change their physical appearances. In general, they look like us, except their eyes are much bigger, they have elongated heads, and their height is far more taller in size than that of humans. Some Anunnaki are 9 feet tall. Even their women are extremely tall by human standards. Some women are 8 feet tall. The Anunnaki can transmute and manipulate their bodies if needed. In remote times, the Anunnaki were worshipped as gods among mortal humans. They were called the Shining Ones. We find references to them in almost all ancient scripts. In the Bible, they are referred to as angels. The ancient Egyptians described the Shining Ones who ruled consecutively before the deluge. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, it is written, I may lift up the earth, that the Shining Ones may open their arms unto me, that the company of the gods may speak with the words of the Shining Ones unto Osiris Ani, that the hearts of the gods may direct him, and that they may make him powerful in heaven among the gods who have taken unto themselves visible forms. Anunnaki God Enlil giving man the plow. In chapter 134, 10-12, we read, He is the Shining One arrayed in heaven among the mighty ones. The food of Osiris, the scribe Ani, triumphant, is even the cakes and ale which are made for their mouths. I go in through the disk, I come out through the Godahui. I speak with the followers of the gods, I speak with the disk, I speak with the Shining Ones, and the disk granteth me to be victorious in the blackness of. In verses 15-17, it not only referred to the Shining Ones, but it also mentions the disk. It is written, I speak with the disk. This could easily be interpreted as a conversation with the pilot of the flying disk. In the Book of the Dead, it is written that the demigod Horus flew in the winged disk, which shined in many colors. This sounds more like a flying object that resembles what we would call today a UFO. The shining ones appear in many different cultures around the world, often under different names. They were in North America, South America, Europe, Australia, and Asia. There are many descriptions of the shining ones. Nin.Ka, Lilith the owl cylinder seal. In the Book of Enoch, an ancient script of Hebrew origin, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, we find passages referring to the shining ones. And after some days my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant by him and bore a son. And his body was white as snow and red as the blooming of a rose, and the hair of his head and his long locks were white as wool, and his eyes beautiful. And when he opened his eyes, he lighted up the whole house like the sun, and the whole house was very bright. And thereupon he aroused in the hands of the midwife, opened his mouth, and conversed with the Lord of righteousness. And his father Lamech was afraid of him and fled, and came to his father Methuselah. And he said unto him, I have begotten a strange son, diverse from and unlike man, and resembling the sons of the God of heaven, and his nature is different and he is not like us, and his eyes are as the rays of the sun, and his countenance is glorious. And it seems to me that he is not sprung from me but from the angels. When Noah was born his long locks were white as wool and his eyes were like the rays of the sun. This scared his father because he believed Noah was a child of the shining ones. The next passage taken from the Book of Enoch, we learn that the shining ones were very tall in stature, and there appear to me 2 men very tall, such as I have never seen on earth. And their faces shone like the sun, and their eyes were like burning lamps, and fire came forth from their lips. The shining ones were non-human and they were giants. They were a group of alien astronauts who arrived on Earth and seeded life many thousands of years ago. The shining ones are also described in the Vedic literature. According to Hindu mythology, heavenly beings came to Earth in the distant past. These deities lived among humans and they possessed various flying machines. The humans are said to be descendants of a race called the Devas, which literally means the shining ones. These human survivors were of a forgotten civilization of a race of tall, white-skinned, red/blonde-haired people. Chapter 9 German Flying Disc. It was December of 1919. The head of the Thiel Society, Karl Haushofer, had invited a handful of the most respected occultists to meet at a secluded cabin in the forest foothills of the Alps, near Berchtesgaden. The guests included a representative of the Knights Templar and a specialist in Asian artifacts. As they gathered together, Haushofer revealed a surprise. 2 young and exceptionally beautiful women joined the group. One of the young women was very quiet. She was barely 18 years old and, for some reason, her real identity was a guarded secret. She was introduced as Sigrun. Her significance will reveal itself later. The other woman was Maria Orsic. Aside from their stunning appearance, both had exceptionally long hair, contrary to the current vogue, that was worn in a ponytail. Haushofer introduced them as trans mediums and announced that Maria had received a communication from an extraterrestrial civilization. Some of the communication was in the form of text automatic writing written by Maria in her altered state. She showed the group several pages with strange symbols. Haushofer had the pages long enough before the meeting to have shown them around. He had determined that one was written in a secret Templar code while the other was in a Sumerian alphabet. Both had already been translated. The texts made some shocking claims, but offered proof of their validity. Instructions on how to build an anti-gravity engine. Leaving no stone unturned, Haushofer even had the distinguished scientist, Victor Schauberger, review the physics of the design and literally sign off on its potential. Maria explained that the civilization she contacted originated in the constellation Taurus the Bull. In particular, the extraterrestrials were from a planet that was in orbit around a star called Aldebaran. She further explained that their spacecraft engine worked on an energy source that is called Vrill. Claims were made that the anti-gravity engine also has the ability to alter time. The texts are detailed enough so that the engine could be built, tested, and then used to transport worthy humans to their world for a meeting. While the Thiel Society was focused on mediumship and contact with aliens, their main interest was in finding an alternative to the inhuman and unhealthy industrial revolution that affected their German population. The anti-gravity engine was, according to Maria, a gift from this advanced race for humanity so that energy would be plentiful and wars would be unnecessary. But the Thiel Society wanted the engine for its time travel potential. They dreamed of going back to the time when the gods walked the earth so they could learn more about spiritual truth. The guests believed what Maria had revealed to them, and they agreed to seek financial support to build the engine from wealthy industrialists who were members of the Thiel Society and other occult groups. Maria was quickly tasked with convincing contributors to help with this project. Although they had the same objective, building the Vrill engine, the Thiel and Vrill societies had different motives. The Thiel Society was practical and foresaw a new energy source to exploit. The Vrill were more concerned with making contact, learning from and potentially visiting the aliens on their world. In 1922, Thiel and Vrill jointly produced the JFM, Gensitzflugmaschine, or other world flight machine. It was just the engine and was bench tested on a tether for 2 years. It was during this time that the anti-gravity and time distortion were noted. Without notice, the JFM was abruptly taken apart and shipped off to the Augsburg works of Messerschmitt for future use. The project had been led by Dr. W. O. Schumann, Technical University of Munich, who later developed a levitation unit from the research, which was called the Schumann Munich or SM Levitator. Dr. Schumann had an unusual view of science and technology, believing in two opposing principles: explosion, the work of Satan, and implosion, the divine principle. This idea was also held by the Templars, supposedly the secret knowledge discovered by Pythagoras. In everything we recognize two principles that determine the events: light and darkness, good and evil, creation and destruction, as in electricity. We know plus and minus. It is always either or. These two principles, the creative and the destructive, also determine our technical means. Everything destructive is of satanic origin, everything creative is of divine origin. Every technology is based upon explosion or combustion and is thus to be called satanic. The coming new age will be an age of a new, positive, divine technology. Dr. Schumann, from SS Archives. The Vrill engine did not consume, explode, or destroy anything in its operation. It fit perfectly with the Thiel philosophy and motivated Vrill research as participation in this divine principle. The Thiel Society has been underestimated and virtually censored from our history books. Seemingly crazy laws outlaw the display or discussion of these societies in Europe today. But it is a fact that Thiel was largely responsible for creating the Nazi Party, so much so that their occult symbols are synonymous with the Third Reich. The swastika, lightning bolts of the SS, and the Iron Cross, the symbol of the Black Sun, are but a few symbols with occult origins. As Thiel became more concerned with politics and power, the Vrill maintained their esoteric quests. All of the Nazi leaders were members of Thiel and later, after Maria Orsic's revelation, joined Vrill. Adolf Hitler, Alfred Rosenberg, Heinrich Himmler, Hermann Göring, and Hitler's personal physician, Drive. Theodor Morell, all of the inner circle were Vrill and Thiel members. The success of the JFM was wisely kept secret until 1933, when one of their own became the head of Germany. Hitler is said to have given the go order to both Thiel and Vrill societies in developing their own Gesellschafts. He understood that the technology was a potential new Wunderwaffe, wonder weapon. The Vrill supervised development of the RFC, Rundflugzeug, or round aircraft series in 1937 next to the Arado Brandenburg aircraft facility. A series of RFC discs were tested there, culminating in the RFC-V German RFC VI 1940. German RFC IV 1938. Meanwhile, Thiel was working with a special SS unit, EIV, exploring how to exploit this apparently new energy. They had their own disc project in a secret location called Hanneberg, and it was not tethered. Beginning in 1935, their disc was known as the H-Gerät, Hanneberg device, eventually shortened to Hannebu. In 1939, the disc's Triebwerk, thrustwork, engine was perfected. Hannebu I code-named RFC-V when Thiel moved it to the main testing facility in Arado Brandenburg. Vrill 1 Triebwerk 1 Glock 4 Schwingungseinstellung 10 Schwingungspanzer Laux plus Paul Rahmen 1 BXY Paul 6 Körper 2 Haupt 0 Anla 7 Elektromagnet Generator 8 Stromspulser U Offenmer 3 Glockenmantel 6 Yakuum. The Thiel Triebwerk had an electromagnetic gravitic engine whose heart was a spinning tank of heated mercury and 3 parallel discs rotating in opposite directions. Being a conductor, the mercury was made to interact with an electric field in such a way that it behaved like a superconductor and was able to isolate the immediate environment from local gravity effects. Some recent thoughts have compared the anti-gravity observations of monoatomic gold to what might be happening to the heated mercury. It has been noted that atoms not involved with cohesive bonds with other atoms, solitary atoms, gain back the energy usually expended in the bond and speed up and distort the orbits of their nuclear particles. These distortions somehow liberate the atoms from the effects of gravity. The anti-gravity engine only isolated the craft from gravity. It did not really levitate it. Although the energy needed was greatly reduced because of the elimination of gravity, the disk craft still required some power to ascend and move through the atmosphere. Some versions of the disk had jet engines and reached 2,900 to 12,000 km/h. The Thiel group eventually designed magnetic pulse thrusters that served to maneuver and propel the craft once they were in their anti-gravity state. As these magnetic thrusters had no explosion, they were the ideal solution. By 1944, Thiel had produced the Hanabu II series, including some really large disks that were capable of carrying 200 troops, like the huge 139-meter-long cylindrical mothership called the Andromeda device. The triumph of the Vrill group was their seventh vehicle, Vrill V, designed specifically for interplanetary travel. As the war turned in favor of the Allies, Thiel moved their production facilities to a deep mine in Poland. They continued work on their disks with slave labor until the very end, at which time the mine was flooded, then collapsed to prevent Allies from gaining access. It's believed that any disks that were at this facility were flown away, but some think at least one or two were captured. The site shows the foundation of a large electric generator with conduits leading to the center of a large concrete platform, which is still there today. Vrill also made plans to evacuate, but their plans were a bit more elaborate. They had their best interplanetary disk, Vrill V, ready to take them to safety in a most unlikely place. Over the years since Maria Orsic had made contact, the Vrill had learned much about their telepathic, alien counterparts. In fact, the Vrill's information about the aliens had already transformed the war effort with submarines and supply boats diverting resources to, of all places, Antarctica. German Vrill V Geist, spirit. According to the Vrill mediums, the race of people they had telepathically contacted were from one of two inhabited planets that orbited an old star, called Aldebaran, 64 light-years away in the constellation we know of as Taurus, the bull. On historical artifacts, they are always depicted with horns. They made contact because they had been observing human activity, specifically noting our warlike behavior. They decided to give humanity a gift, the Vrill engine, to eliminate the competition for resources and energy, the cause of human conflict. Millions of years ago, the Aldebaran people had evolved to utilize Vrill energy akin to our understanding of electricity, but taken to an extreme. They had developed mental abilities such that they were able to interact with this Vrill energy, using it for creative or destructive purposes. In the course of their son's life, it had expanded to become a red giant. The environmental conditions on the inhabited planets caused biological stress, and some of their race degenerated to where they lost their mental abilities to use Vrill. When they realized this, they quickly isolated the pure Aldebaran race from those that degenerated and became strict about breeding and associating with the inferior strains. As the environment of their solar system deteriorated, the elite Aldebarans evacuated their race, both pure lines and inferiors, to other inhabited worlds. Earth was one of these. Although these things were reported at the turn of the last century, well before Zechariah Sitchin made the Sumerian legends popular, it is easy to see that this same story is contained in the ancient Sumerian legends. Like Sitchin's theory, the Aldebarans noted the destructive effects of a dark sun that enters our solar system every 3,600 years and noted that, upon one cycle, the Earth became uninhabitable. The Aldebaran race retreated from the surface to a subterranean cavity located under the continent of Antarctica, from where they have been observing and attempting to control human destiny. The Aldebarans realized that this was too strange for anyone to believe, but they pointed to the many abandoned megalithic sites around the globe as evidence of their past life on the surface. In any event, they were offering 100% proof with the plans for the Vrill engine. Once that was built and tested, the world would never be the same. It became evident to the Aldebarans, as well as the Vrill, that the gift had been used unwisely. Production of disks with gun turrets and remotely operated weapon disks contradicted the original motive. The Vrill visited the Aldebaran residents under Antarctica, as has been well documented, and began a program for populating a subterranean island called New Swabia. During the later years of World War II, it was noted that the SS had implemented special breeding programs similar to those of the Aldebaran race, with the offspring destined to occupy this Antarctic land. While we cannot know whether these facts about Aldebaran were real or imagined, the construction plans that the Vrill telepaths received were so accurate that they led to the successful construction of the Genseitsflugmaschine, a flying machine for the other side. As the reality of the war became clear, members of Vrill were increasingly frustrated by attempts to use their revealed technology for killing machines. Around Christmas time 1943, an important meeting of the Vrill Gesellschaft took place at the seaside resort of Kolberg. Maria Orsic, and Sigrun Kuhnheim presided and discussed the urgency of the Aldebaran project. They feared that the war chaos posed a danger to their ultimate goal of using the Vrill engine's time warp potential to reach their benefactors on their Aldebaran planet. The mediums had received precise information about the habitable planets around the sun Aldebaran and had already planned a trip there. A few weeks later, at a January 22, 1944 meeting between Himmler, Kunkel of the Vrill Society, and Drive Schumann, the Aldebaran project was discussed. When tethered, the anti-gravity engine produced a time warp field. The Vrill had been told that this would enable them to travel faster than the speed of light. They had conveyed specific details on how to achieve this. So specific, in fact, that a test flight was conducted. The Vrill were allowed to use Vrill V, a large-capacity disk, 45 meters in diameter that had just been built and tested. According to reports, the first test flight in the Dimension Channel took place in the winter of 1944 with the craft tightly tethered. In this way the Vrill engine could be used as a sort-of Stargate. It was a sobering experience, just short of disaster. The Vrill V returned after the flight looking as if it had been flying for 100 years. The outer skin was damaged in several places. For sure, these problems would have to be addressed before the real trip to Aldebaran was made or the passengers would not survive. Vrill V at the Brandenburg testing grounds. The woman in the foreground is the Vrill Gesellschaft medium Sigrun, who has been authenticated in other WW2 photos standing in front of Focke-Wulf 190 fighters. She not only supervised the construction of Vrill V but she was also its pilot. Vrill's medium Sigrun Kuhnheim made frequent trips to the facility to oversee construction and testing of the Vrill V. In 1944, a group of engineers approached her with a request. They wanted to know if the Vrill Triebwerk engine could be adapted to one of their projects, the Arado E-555 strategic bomber. They were abruptly told no and returned to their conventional designs. Sigrun was actually insulted because the entire purpose of the Vrill discs was aimed at peaceful space flight. In early March of 1945, the Thiel Society received a letter, signed by Maria Orsic, making reference to the trip to Aldebaran. It seems some of the Vrill group had already made the trip and had decided to stay. The letter ends with, "Niemand bleibt hier, no one has remained here." But did they really go to another planet? Many people now believe that Aldebaran was a red herring. The real destination was the utopia that was being established in the Antarctic New Swaziland. This was the raison d'etre for the racial purity and breeding programs. This is where the 100-plus submarines that Allies counted missing were sent, along with countless cargo ships. During the occupation of Germany, at the beginning of 1945, Americans discovered photographs of the Hanabu II and the Vrill I crafts as well as of the Andromeda device, the 300-foot cigar-shaped craft, in the secret archives of the SS, but their most precious find were two prominent scientists, Victor Schauberger and Werner von Braun, who were ushered into the United States under the now unclassified Project Paperclip. It's no wonder that a certain American air and space developer is reported to have confessed before he died, "If the public ever learns that we have had this technology all these years, they will never forgive us for keeping it secret." Conspiracy theorists often attempt to show that the same Thiel and Vrill designs appear in contemporary UFO photographs. They say this proves the Nazis escaped with the craft before the war's end and explains why we see UFO craft so often. I like to think there is a group of humans, somewhere, who have worked so diligently to improve their genetics, creating a superior and more healthy body and mind. Looking at our world today, it seems a goal beyond reach. It is said that the Vrill energy can repair a body's DNA, allowing one to revert to the healthiest state of youth. The medium Sigrun Kuhnheim was supposedly 140 years old and never aged. Lots of things are possible when you can manipulate time. German RFCII, Rundflugzeug or Round Aircraft 1936. AA. 2 AG RFCIV, Rundflugzeug or Round Aircraft 1938. German FV Flying Disc Foo Fighters 1944 to 1945. German Vrill X Feldermals postwar design. Elkativ DP Hyoaft Kestasiert Pibakiro Tertier Shisho K saved. Aneda SSI section and 440 Menti we Torres Eau. Wiza verse Bua OMC wherein Fe den RFL Ukliwatar Almond equals AEIE first eons and Fe OEMNE rete Pluckrectortes we tor decile T of 3. German patent of a Nazi UFO registered under number 2,147,668. This spacecraft was initially developed by Dr. Heinrich Richard Meath, based upon Maria Orsic's instructions, found in General Eisenhower's Special Task Force file. Dr. Alexander Lippisch confirmed this. D. Sebelm Hummendofi registered sign Pluger Dewey Reprobus G. Stand, in Annotiar Prebestvillage, Mus DI, 4 Banden 2 Stick, E8 Rox Diet, Buranti 7 Stuck 100. Such as stated by Klein, Ep. ILL United States Department of Justice Federal Bureau. And to your agency, it and its contents are not to be distributed outside your agency. G. Savingi Bonsley regularly WW the payroll saving plan. ILL United States Department Agent, he, were you UAE any Onadaji fates meant, minus memorandum equals 3. Director, FBI Ramif Sak, Miami, 62-0-11928, JTAE, Zeinunger Boss Degree Warpect, NY, a review of the Mian indices revealed information reflecting subject appeared at the Miami office on July 24, 1959, and W. Luntier to return to Austria as an intelligence agent. He expressed motivation was to do anything to repay the debt he felt he owed the United States. He what afforded the Nashington, D.C., headquarters address of the Centra Intelligence Agency and told this inquiry should be directed Terre. I also, on July 4, 1961, he appeared at the Miami office and gave a incoherent story of recently mecting and individual who asked Bia to kill bis actor, appeared for to be summerbad bewildered ad continuously gazed away frost the interviewing agent. During his most recent visit to the Mind office, Jim Ian genuinely concerned about the existence of the CHT allegedly photographed during Hovaber 1944 Flyoxbebided no Ikshna nor mental diner and a petritabi rational T in view of EE afforded UFO seer, phone apparently by responsible courses, this informa. Delimited to the Bureau for Consideration of Pose AO to the U-5 Air Force, HIAI 1 June 12 HKI_WR FIPS 06 GX UN 27 a Bay US. Savingi Bonsley regularly WW the payroll saving plan. ILL United States Department of Justice Federal Bureau of Investigation Miami, Florida Dune 8 1967 Re-information concerning APIAC FIA Free Fawn April 26, 1967 Gearmine, Florida appeared at the Miami office second furnished the following information relating to an object presently referred to as an unidentified flying object, he allegedly photographed during November 1044, sometime during 1943, he graduated from the German Air Academy and was assigned ACMO member of the late FEF on the Russian front. Near the end of 1944, he was released from this duty and was assigned and test pilot to 2 top-secret project in the Black Forest of Austria. During this period he observed the circuit T described above. It wags muser-shaped, about 21 joad in diameter, radio-controlled, wad-mounted several jet engines around the exterior portican of the craft. He further described the exterior portion as revolving around the dome the center which is in stationary. I+ was at MMBME responsibility to photograph the object while in flight. He asserted B was able to retrieve 4 negative of a photograph he made at 7,000 met, 20,000 feet. A Xerox copy of the negative, as furnished by, appears on the last page of this communication. Also, at still photograph the alleged Y mode at the risk of NY life, illustrating the object parked in a banger, appears on the last page. Heckmering to aim, the objectraft was designed and engineered by Ferret Hainus known /GMU German in Pinakar whose present whereabouts I unknown him, TLES wounds D1 T-Tekin it used to D high allied forests upin the termination of hostatidics, mimicu Zarim unsakosruli NCT tipta to Nyota the Duran draft, but was apprenticed by the Gestapo. Ascent fe prori fe EGF. Format Cerning 4 in Vienna, Austria, sometime during late 1943 or early 1944, Arelse assumed the secrets pertaining to this aircraft were captured by Allied forces. He said this type of aircraft was responsible for the downing of at least one American 5-26 airplane. He furnished the following fuel and engine data. See Japanese yen well mixture of NOM4-GO-TN methyl alcohol, CHA8 rather than oxygen holding mixture of hydrogen peroxide HO0_ in water. 7 meters 1, 32 high 2 rocket motors, smooth flow, rotary drive over 2000 meter per second. Said he copied this date from a board located in the Bangor urn. QM asserted he was shot down by the British on March 14, 1945, after having been reassigned to the Eastern Front. He was held prisoner by the British in London and later in Brussels until his release in 1946. He departed for the United States from Bremerhaven, Germany, on December 26, 1951, entering the United States in New Jersey on January 7, 1952, and WAG subsequently naturalized in Maine during 1952. He presently employed as a mechanic at Eastern Airlines, Miami, Florida. IC related he was born May 3, 1924, in Austria. Stated he has withheld this information because he assumed the United States possessed it. He has become increasingly concerned because of the unconfirmed reports concerning similar object and damage the United States has such an airy rate. He feels each two weapon would be beneficial in victims and would prevent the further loss of American lives, which was his paramount purpose in contacting the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. Adeditme reiterated he has the original negatives of both photographs. Fic made the shots were taken at 030 Eakantine Expocure. This document contains neither recommendations nor conclusions of the FAE. It is the property of the free and is and to your agency. It and its contents are not to be distributed outside your agency. G. Chapter 10 The Myth Beluzzo Project. The Beluzzo Saucer Project may have been an outgrowth